3, which I have to say is great when you're a scholar in the field of creativity. However, in 2012, Adobe did a study on creativity in education. Now, this research is based on interviews with a nationally representative sample of 1,000 full-time salaried workers, ages 25 and older, with at least a 4-year college degree. Out of this 1,000, 96% of professionals agreed that creativity is required for economic growth and is valuable to society. I'm not sure about the other 4%, but 96% said yes, valuable and required. Additionally, 78% say it is important in their career. Yet 32% don't feel comfortable thinking creatively in their career. And a large majority of these people, 78%, wish they had more creative ability. So as you can see, we have a gap between what the workforce requires and how people feel prepared to use their creative abilities. So now many educators will acknowledge the fact that yes, creativity is important. And hopefully you're sitting there, if you weren't thinking that creativity is important, you can say, oh, okay, I can see why creativity would be important, and especially creative problem solving. And then they say to me, okay, I want to bring creativity into the classroom, but I have 2 major problems. And I bet you could guess what they are. The first one is, how do I actually do it? So how do I actually bring creativity into my classroom? And the second question I get often is, how do I bring it in when I'm already pressed for time? And I'm sure you're probably sitting there thinking the same thing. So to answer these questions for you, I'd like to go back to the basics again. As I mentioned, creativity is the ability to generate novel and useful ideas. But being able to do this is underpinned by a set of skills. As we know from research in our department, anyone can develop and nurture these skills. And while various researchers have discussed numerous skills over the year, I like to focus on the work of a man called E. Paul Torrance, who is known as the father of creativity in education. And here's a picture of E. Paul Torrance, who actually died in 2003. Now, E. Paul Torrance had a massive publication record, over 1,800 articles and books he had published before he died in the year 2003. And he followed a group of what he called beyonders over several decades. Now, these beyonders went beyond in their creative accomplishments. And when he studied these beyonders, what he realized throughout his research was that these beyonders had specific creativity skills, and he utilized these skills as a part of a creativity set for creative teaching and learning. Now, I sent these to you over email about, I think, on Tuesday, and hopefully you had a chance to at least look through these skills. The list I sent you via email contains many of Torrance's beyonder skills for creative teaching and learning. And you can see the little asterisks next to the names of the ones that are beyonder skills. Additionally, other skills were brought in through this weaving process that I developed that highlighted some of the more contemporary skills of a creative person, such as mindfulness, embracing complex challenges, and tolerating ambiguity. Take a look at the list right now and turn to a partner and share one skill that you feel you enjoy using and that you feel you're good at. And if you're flying solo at your location, take a moment and circle the skill you feel comes most naturally to you. You could just take 2 minutes and turn to a partner and say, this is a skill that I feel like I'm really good at. Go on. Okay, are you ready to come back?
I'm ready whenever you are.
Yeah, I think we're ready here. I don't know about the rest of everybody else.
Okay, I'm a student in another.
You ready?
Yeah, of course we're, all engaged in discussion now, and it's going to be tough to get us back. So.
All right, I'll bring you back.
Bring us back.
Okay, so what I'd like to talk to you now, and I want you to hold that skill in your mind, the one that you feel comes naturally to you, and I'm sure they're all different. What we're going to look at is how you integrate these skills into your content. So as you can see on the left is your content and lesson. That's your content goal. Then you add a creativity goal or a creativity skill you want to weave in, and then you have some ideas. So the weaving process is really very simple. In order to develop your students' creativity skills, you take your content goal, you take your creativity skill, and then you generate ideas on how you can weave those two together. Now, this probably sounds like something which is easier to say than do, so I'm going to give you some quick examples. My colleague, who I did the MOOC with, Dr. John Cabra, has been teaching a lesson on factor analysis. And he found that the students were not engaged in his PowerPoint lecture and that they couldn't retain any of the information. So his content goal was to teach factor analysis. So he added the creativity skill, make it swing, make it ring. This skill is all about bringing movement into your lesson. So he created this wall that you see on the left in the classroom, which immediately piqued his students' curiosity when they came in. And I think they were pretty excited that it wasn't going to be another PowerPoint. Then he had given the groups the numbers and asked them to put in the related factors, as you could see here on the right. He found the students engaged with the learning, and then they were better able to retain the information. So he had them moving around in groups, placing the numbers where they thought they belonged based on the article that they read. And guess what? At the end of the lesson, they were able to describe what factor analysis actually was. In one of my Introduction to Creativity graduate classes, I have a goal for my students to understand various definitions of creativity. Now, before, when I first started teaching this course, I would provide them with a very long PowerPoint of definitions to show them just how many they were. And I thought I was doing a great job, but they were terribly bored. So I decided to bring in the creativity goal of produce and consider many alternatives. I had them go to the library and go into the creativity journals. And we're very fortunate at Buffalo State to have the largest collection of creativity literature. So we would go into the creativity section and we would bring out all the creativity journals, and they would start searching for definitions from various scholars. Then I asked them to write their own definitions. And finally, I had them discuss all the definitions they found in groups. They sorted through all the definitions and then had to create a model or theory representing the various definitions they found, which you can see as the background of this particular slide. You can imagine how much fun it was for the students to have to search for these definitions and to talk about the various definitions they could find and the relationship with their own definition. So they were able to actually put their own definition into context. One more quick definition for you, or one more quick example. And this is a final example I'd like to share with you, which centers around another lesson from Dr. John Cabra. So he wanted his students to familiarize themselves with this complex thinking skills model that we teach in our graduate courses. And he would give the students this research article you see on the left, and then he would have them ask questions about the model. And this article is very dense, and I probably shouldn't say that because it's written by my department chair, but it's a really heavy article to read. And they would read it and they would ask some questions, but they wouldn't really grasp the model. So he decided the lesson needed to be revamped, and he brought in a little bit of playfulness and humor. He still had the students read the article, but this time they had to work in small groups to create a Lego model of the article and share back with the class the Lego model they developed with the article that they had read. And as you can see from these pictures, the students At the top, they're very engaged with creating the model. You see one of the models and what it looks like in terms of all the skills. You see the students creating things from the ceiling and describing it in great detail. The students were very engaged. They were excited. They had a fantastic time literally building what they were learning. So hopefully you understood how we brought together the content goal with the creativity skill, weave those together to bring in a weaving idea. Now we're going to do a little bit of practice using something that I'm sure you're all at least familiar with, and that is the contract and syllabus. So if you're anything like me, your content goal of having students understand your contract and syllabus is a bit mundane. You read it over, you ask if there are any questions, and then it's the end of the lesson. And usually when you say to students, do you have any questions? They look at you with a blank stare and don't really ask. Maybe they ask one or two questions, and they go away and you say, go through the contract and syllabus, come back to me and see if you have any other questions. And of course, there's still that often blank stare. Maybe one or two people ask a question. And then you get halfway into the semester and people start asking questions because the contract and syllabus wasn't clear perhaps, or they didn't really read through it. And you say, well, you were supposed to actually read through that contract and syllabus. That's our relationship with one another. So if you're anything like that and you struggle with that contract and syllabus, you're missing out on a great opportunity to integrate creative thinking into your content. So we're going to give it a try. I'm going to take you through 4 different creativity skills now and what they would look like integrated into the same content of understanding your contract and syllabus. And while we'll be coming up with a lot of ideas, you only need to select one idea at the end and implement it to have an impact. So I'm an ideas person. I actually call myself an idea doula. I love helping people take their ideas and bring them to fruition. So we're going to come up with lots of ideas over the next few minutes. And then what we're going to do is you only really need to think about one idea. So you don't need to put all of these ideas into place when you teach that first day of class, your contract and syllabus. You just need to have one to make an impact. So, hold on. Okay, so there you see your content lesson, which is your contract, the overview of your contract and syllabus. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the creativity skill, get glimpses of the future. Okay. Now, get glimpses of the future is a skill about predicting, imagining, and exploring opportunities and situations that do not yet exist. This skill is important to creativity because it helps students imagine a future state. So, if we wanted to take our content lesson of overviewing the contract and syllabus and getting glimpses of the future, what do we get? So I'm going to share with you some of my ideas. First, I need to move over my little box. First, you could have students make a list of goals they have for the class. Then ask them to create a plan of action to reach those goals. That's the first idea. Another idea is to have students imagine getting an A in the course after they've read your contract and syllabus. What did they have to do in order to get the A? You could have them write down their ideas, what do I need to do, and then report back to you all the things that they're going to do in order to get an A in your course. And that's, of course, when you say, it's going to take a lot more than that. You need to impress me. Finally, you could have students write a letter to themselves at the end of the semester, and then they give that letter back to you. And then on that last day of class, you hand them the letter back saying, did you achieve what you wanted to achieve as a result of the work that you did in this course? Now, that's something I have my students do every semester. I have them write a letter to themselves at the end of the course. And they love receiving the letter on that last day. It's really exciting for them to read what they had originally anticipated the course was going to be like. So hopefully when you look at this list, you're thinking, these ideas, they look pretty straightforward. I could actually do this, next semester when I start teaching. Now, this is important because in order to develop and reinforce these skills, we don't have to do anything over the top or quirky or overly complex. The key point is that by using this model, you can hit 2 learning objectives at the same time, the content lesson objective and the creativity skill, without taking any more time away from your class. So now it's your turn. Turn to your group and see if you can come up with any additional ideas on how to help your students understand their contract and syllabus and get glimpses of the future at the same time. And I'd like you to post those ideas that you have in the discussion section of Zoom. And in about 3 minutes, I'm going to have Chris read them out to the group. Are you ready? Are there any questions before you begin?
I don't think any questions, so ready, go.
Go, 3 minutes. So take another 30 seconds to type in any ideas into the discussion forum, and then Chris is going to read them out to us. Okay, Chris, would you mind reading out a few of the ideas to us?
Sure, yeah, so keep them coming, you guys, as I go down the list. We had an idea that you could sort of role play various scenarios that might play out in the course with the students, give them sort of role of the student who maybe has missed 2 weeks of class, and how that relates to the policy in the course, and then have that another student be the instructor and have them role play how might that work out if they've missed, say, a crucial assignment, or they, something like that. So do some role playing during your outlining your syllabus. There's one on have student reflection on what the student roles and instructor roles in the class should be. So have them explicitly reflect on that first day. Had an idea that have students brainstorm ideas that they would like to see the course address, and then see if the syllabus does that, or how it could do that if it doesn't. At CPD, they're talking about their content, getting health providers to understand what to do with stable versus unstable cardiac patients. So I guess really getting into what the course is about and really starting to get into the meat of it rather than just go over policies. Patrice and Cornell said, what are your goals for this course that you don't see in the syllabus? Again, this is similar to our idea. What are your future plans? How does this fit within the course? Have students assess what they think is the minimum they need to do to pass the class in case they will need to consider dropping. Donna said, have them look into life problems that might get in the way of completing the course. Have them write something about what they would do to resolve these issues if they came up, based on what is stated in the syllabus and contract. We had an idea of have students think about challenges. This, again, you're seeing a lot of similar themes in here. Have students think about the challenges, the policy, about the challenges related to policies in the syllabus, and then brainstorm ways they can meet these challenges. At Suffolk, they said, let's ask students to think about what skills they will learn in the class and how they will relate to future jobs. So really kind of make it practical for them. All use their phones to find images of the region under discussion in class, and then use maps. She wrote, take keywords and learning objectives, say 3 words, and ask students what they think the learning objective is. So objective exercise, I like that. Robin, ask students what they need to do to get an A, a B, and so on, and then give them control over the syllabus. What are the final projects? How are they graded? Building the rubric. It's another, I guess she's got a bunch of them in here. Use case studies in a similar way. Have students select the 1 to 2 outcomes for the course and say how those outcomes relate to their life. What superpower can you get from the knowledge or course? I like that one. Ask students to create a failure plan. What would they have to do to not do to fail the course? So this is back to the one about cardiac patients and discussing to set up the provider to scenarios, the person in charge to be in an unfamiliar location and teammates so they can make decisions that they make. So another scenario, setting up scenarios, role-playing kind of situation. Ask students to think about how this course relates to their future courses, make those connections, I like that. Have students do research on jobs they could get based on completing this course.
Wow, those are fantastic ideas. I have to say, for the first round of doing this, I'm really impressed with the amount of ideas that you generated and the interesting and diverse ideas you created. So congratulations. So we're going to try another round. Are you ready? Yep. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is curiosity. And curiosity, I'm going to move this over, is the skill. This skill is about reinforcing the internal urge to learn. So curiosity is something that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and just being curious. And unfortunately, we take a lot of curiosity out of our educational systems now because it's more about finding the right answer versus asking the right question. So curiosity is really about getting your students to ask more questions, better questions, all kinds of questions, and just to create that internal urge to say, I want to know more. And of course, we want that in our students, that they want to ask questions and learn more. So we're going to take the same content that we just did, okay? We're going to overview of contract and syllabus, but this time we're going to use a different creativity skill because I want to show you how different ideas come up with different skills. So this one is going to focus on curiosity, and I'm going to give you some examples. The first idea is to give students on the first day of class 20 Post-its as they come in, and then have them come up with 20 questions that they have about the contract and syllabus. Now, some students will struggle with that because, they can't come up with questions. They're not used to being curious, but you're going to have to ask them to be curious and come up with 20 questions they have, and you can post the questions all over the board, and you can answer, pick and choose some of those questions and answer their questions for them. So, sorry. Second, you could start the class with a curiosity quotient. So at least 30 questions have to be asked by the end of the day. So you want to leave class in an hour, 20 minutes. At least 30 questions have to be asked by the whole group. So that's another thing that you could do to arouse curiosity, bring curiosity in, and to overview the contract and syllabus. And my last idea to get you started is to ask students to generate a list of questions they have about the content that you are teaching. So on the first day of class, I teach an Introduction to Creative Thinking class. What are 30 questions, or all the questions that you have about the field of creativity that we might look at over the course of the semester? And then you can have those all up on the board, and you can use that as a starting point for a good conversation. So I gave you 3 ideas to start. Now you're going to talk in your groups again, and again, writing in the discussion board, what are some ideas that you have to get your students curious as you overview that contract and syllabus? Again, I'll give you another 3 minutes. Are you ready? Go. And take another 30 seconds. Write down any of your ideas in the discussion.
Cindy, oh boy, that's not gonna work. No.
Felt like him. Must not.
I moved closer to the mic. Is this any better, Becky?
Better.
All right. I'll try to speak a little more slowly, too. All right. Do you want me to go?
Yes, please.
All right. Let me just back up here. So, so our idea was have the students do a 1-minute paper on that first day, starting with what if and I wonder questions, prompts.
Mm.
Have students think about ideas they want to explore in the course and why. Donna said, ask them about the muddiest point for the day, something that wasn't really fully clear during the class, so the muddiest point exercise. Before the syllabus is even reviewed, ask the students to anticipate what will be required of them just by knowing the course title. What about a large class, size 100 or more, and would the activities be graded? Include secret content like the Van Halen green M&M story. Students need to find the secret content in the syllabus, so like a little treasure hunt. I like that. Treats. Use an online Post-it app so students can do the Post-it exercise online. I think that was a question that well, maybe hope addressed at some point, Cindy, the relevance to some of these ideas in an online environment, since they can support online courses. After initial review, have the students choose a date on the syllabus and ask students to pair up and ask questions about that date or a topic. Then ask one another questions. Break the syllabus apart and not give it to them all at once. This is an idea we had. Ask them what it should look like as a whole and then justify their ideas. Have the class talk about what they are excited about, worried about, and dreading, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Have a liquid syllabus where they can make suggestions for changes. I like the liquid syllabus. What makes a good photograph? For a photo class, ask key questions of the discipline. And Robin, here are the ideas from Buffalo. I think they're all probably grouped together here. Have students tell the best and worst part of the syllabus, why or why not. Ask what are students curious about in the field and then customize the course. Choose a learning objective and ask them to brainstorm 20 ways they could achieve that. Allow them to ask why the instructor chose the assignment, text, dates, etc. Dialogue with the instructor, like that. Guess the grade or objective that a previous turned-in assignment was graded or what the outcome it addressed. So use an assignment example from a past section of the course. I like that a lot. Ask why you've made the decisions you've made better. Ask why you've made the decisions you have made, why the percentages and order of content. All right, that's it.
And Chris, there was a question in there about how to craft this with online learning?
Yeah, Patrice had asked that earlier, how many of the things you're talking about here would work in an online course where you don't have them face-to-face.
I think that's a great question. And I teach, this semester I'm teaching all online. So it's always interesting and fun to try to think about how you can craft things in an online environment, especially like Blackboard, which is sort of, no offense to my Blackboard friends out there, is a bit stagnant in terms, it's not really robust to, high levels of creativity. Let's just put it that way. But if you
I don't think you've offended anyone, Cindy.
I didn't offend anyone.
I'll guess.
Okay. I didn't offend anyone. Is that what you said?
No, I don't think so, but
okay.
That's just my
there are so many things I do like about Blackboard, but I use discussion boards. So if I wanted to ask them about, curiosity, if I wanted them to get curious, I can do that same activity, but just use it in a discussion board. So, what are all the things that you can do to ask, what are all the questions that you have? You have to write 20 questions in a discussion post. With the letter of the future and Get Glimpses of the Future, my online courses, there's actually websites where you can write a letter to yourself in the future. And I say to them, I want you to go to this website, and I'm happy to send that link to you. I want you to go to this website. I want you to write a letter about your goals, and I want you to send it to yourself on this day, which is the last day of classes. And that letter that they wrote themselves comes back to them on the last day of class. So that's something you can still do online. And I think the exciting thing about what's happening online is there's so many different, like if you can imagine it, it probably exists. So there are apps where you can brainstorm together. You just have to do a little bit of searching. So I think it just takes it another step higher when you have to find some sort of technology to help to support the kind of engagement you want to have with students.
Cindy, could you just address the synchronous versus asynchronous component to say brainstorming? And is there something lost when you're not all brainstorming together in the moment?
Sure. So there's pros and cons to both, because there's a lot of research that supports individual creativity. So they say group brainstorming doesn't work. Okay. And I have a response to that, by the way, because we just did a huge study on group brainstorming, and group brainstorming does work, but you have to have at least some training in it. So when you say to a group, I want you to brainstorm, then they have to have at least some experience in practicing brainstorming before they're launched into it, which makes a great case for our program and why people should practice brainstorming. Now, there's another case around individual brainstorming. So if you're doing asynchronous brainstorming, that there's that people all have a voice. So there's a lot of online apps and programs where you can brainstorm individually and you can look at other people's ideas. So the benefit of doing it in groups is you bounce off ideas. So I say, let's have something orange, and you say, let's have something orange and red. And then the next person says, I want to have something orange, red, and blue, right? So you can build off ideas. You can do that in an asynchronous learning environment as long as you can see the other ideas. So one of the platforms we use in our online learning with brainstorming and creative problem solving is called Cube, and it's a 3D virtual world, and we've done some research in this 3D virtual world, and we can either get together synchronously as avatars in this virtual world and brainstorm, and it has some great apps to do that, or we can just go into the room when we're on our own, and it's a virtual world, it's a virtual room, very much like Second Life, for those of you who are familiar with Second Life, or any Sims. And you can go in and you can say, okay, I can read all these other ideas and then build on it. So I think if you're going to brainstorm ideas, as long as you have some sort of understanding around deferring judgment around ideas, and that, wild and unusual ideas are accepted, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape. Did that answer the question for you, Chris?
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Great.
You want to see if anybody else has any questions now, or do you want to move on?
Let's move on, because we're almost through the 4 skills, and then we'll answer some questions. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay. So the next skill we're going to look at is playfulness and humor, which is my personal favorite. So playfulness and humor is about bringing fun and childlike enjoyment into the classroom. Now, I'll tell you that when I look at the set of skills, playfulness and humor is the one that really pops out at me as coming natural to me. I have been known to walk into my class as Darth Vader, as a judge. I've been known to bounce balls around the room. I've been known to come in with clown noses for the group. I recognize that this is something that I not only enjoy, but sort of thrive in, the playfulness and humor environment. I also recognize that not all people are like me, which is probably a good thing. So when I bring in playfulness and humor, first of all, I'm always sensitive to not everyone wants to be as playful as I am, and that's okay. I always bring in playfulness and humor to my classes because it is a natural part of who I am as a person, as an educator. So when you think about those skills that come naturally to you, I always say start with those skills. If curiosity is something that you're naturally good at, start bringing in curiosity, because it's going to show that you're going to enjoy doing it, first of all. And second of all, you're going to help your students sort of thrive in that kind of curious environment. If highlighting the essence is something that you find you do really good, you're natural at and you really enjoy, bring that into your classroom. Start with the skills that you feel most comfortable with. Here's my other side of that. Be aware of the skills on the list that you're not very good at. So for example, mindfulness is something that I love thinking about the future. I have a really hard time being in the present. So actually I did my whole dissertation around mindfulness because it's something that I've always felt like I had a challenging time practicing just being in the present moment. So I always make sure I deliberately bring in mindfulness in my classes, because even though I'm not strong and I don't thrive in mindfulness, I thrive in get glimpses of the future, that there are a number of my students who are likely to thrive in that kind of environment. And to reach those kind of natural abilities in my students, it's helpful for them to be able to practice those things. And it's helpful for me as well, because it puts me into that place of practicing that skill as I teach that skill. Does that make sense?
Works, yes.
All right. So playfulness and humor, bringing in fun and childlike enjoyment into the classroom. So again, we're going to look at the same content, contract and syllabus. And this time we're going to look at playfulness and humor. And I'll give you a few ideas to get started. As students walk in, you could give students a rubber ball when they enter the class. And then whenever you say a specific word in the contract, the students have to bounce the ball to a classmate. So it makes them really aware of words. They're listening to what you're saying. They're not doing out thinking. They're looking for the word. They're preparing for the words that you're going to say. So I wouldn't use the word creativity in mine, but maybe mine is thinking or innovation or invention, something I'm going to say, 5 or 6 times throughout the course of the contract and syllabus. And of course, it gets people moving their balls around and they're interacting with their classmates, and it can just be great fun. I've tried that before. You can showcase content-specific jokes and comments or quotes throughout your contract. Students always find that amusing. I think that's sort of a mild way to bring in playfulness and humor for those of you who may not be someone who enjoys rubber balls bouncing around your classroom. And finally, you could play a game where students have to find answers to your contract and syllabus, and the first one to find the answers gets bonus points. I always do something around bonus points on the first day of class because it sort of creates this, fun and playful competitive spirit. It gets people working together. I do it in groups, and I give them a list of questions and say, okay, I want you to find all the answers to this. And they're looking for the answers, and they're looking at the questions that I'm asking, and they're understanding the content, and they're playing a game, and they're interacting with classmates. So that's something else I've tried. So you're going to try with your group for the next 3 minutes, coming up with some ideas on how you can integrate playfulness and humor into that first day of your overview of contract and syllabus. 3 minutes. We'll come back. And take another 30 seconds. And Chris, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the ideas.
Sure, yeah, I'm here. All right, so let me just go back here. And we were just joking about how you really picked a good lesson to apply creativity to, because we all struggle. We could all think of really fun, creative things to do with that we love, but going over your syllabus is not always the most fun thing to do. So you really, it was a good challenge. All right, let's see here. Let's go back to the beginning. So we said debate the content, vote on what stays and goes. Purchase said do a syllabus icebreaker where I take quotes that represent the field, quotes on writing for a college writing class, print them out as half quotes, hand them out, and then students have to find the classmate who has the other half. Then each pair has to justify what they have matched up with the quote correctly and talk about how the quote relates to the course. It's playful. Maybe also fits under make it swing, as they have to get up and move around the room, embed current memes that are relevant into the syllabus. I like that, the memes thing. Everybody has a point in the syllabus taped under their chair. It's like the Oprah. Each student finds the piece of paper and shares that point with the class. All right. Bring a candy and give to students if they answered a question correctly. And online, give them extra credit points if they email, phone, or visit my office in the first week. If they visit my office in the first week of class. In a video overview of the syllabus, mix in funny sound clips, like the Jaws theme or drum roll or applause while you're going over the syllabus, maybe a video. Make stupid, deliberately corny animated videos and memes about syllabus points. If you answer questions correctly, you get a raffle ticket. What movie do you see this content fitting into, or TV show? We talk about playing music at the start of the course. It could be funny or not. Give food prizes that are fun. How does this skill see the day, Patrice wrote? Not sure what that means. Have students justify mulligan for one course requirement, where he's talking about, justify not getting out of something. That could be humorous. Role play and jigsaw into different roles around the course. Combine this with curiosity. Have students call out questions and then earn a piece of candy tossed to them, etc. Jeopardy syllabus. Find funny things like cartoons online that relate. Create a Mad Lib version of the syllabus. Variation on this. Swap out words in the syllabus as a game to have students choose the right word. Take selfies in an online course for icebreaker. Words with friends game around a topic area. Everyone make a meme about the syllabus and share it. Give plastic badges in addition to digital badges when students meet at Competency Illustrated, an infographic syllabus. Role play using pop culture like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. Perhaps you could be like Melissa McCarthy being Sean Spicer, explaining things through hand puppets. From Hope, good one, Hope. Have the class stand, and when a student shares an idea or asks questions, they can sit. Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. We certainly have a playful and humorous group. Great ideas. All right, one more. We're going to do one more, which is embrace the challenge. So embracing the challenge is all about developing an attitude of being open to challenges as opportunities for something new. So you see the openness there, you see, challenges for something new, something novel. And most people, when they hit a challenge, they run the other way. But life is full of challenges, so that's why I like this word, embrace the challenge. So we're going to look at a couple ideas, and then I'm going to give you 2 minutes for this next one because we're starting to run out of time. And again, looking at the contract and syllabus, embracing the challenge this time. 2 of my ideas have a hidden code in your contract and syllabus that your students have to figure out. Or you could ask your students to go through the contract and syllabus and circle the assignment that they think will be most challenging, and then ask them to think about how they plan to overcome the challenge, which is something I do. I teach a graduate course on current issues in creativity research. And the students have to write a big question paper. And typically when I do this, and I do this online, they talk to me about, I'm really concerned about this challenge of writing this big question paper. And as we broke it down, I realized from them that having this word big made it very intimidating. So then I called it the little question paper. And just by doing that and being playful with them and say, okay, did you work on your little question paper, and what questions do you have in a little question, made it much less intimidating. So just by understanding the challenge and switching it around a bit, we were able to make it more approachable as an assignment. So go back to your groups. I'm going to give you 1 minute to see if you can generate 2 ideas per group on how you could use embrace the challenge with the overview of your contract and syllabus. Okay, Chris, we're going to come back.
Okay, yeah. So let me go back. Beginning here. Okay. Turn the syllabus into an escape route challenge. They can't leave until they solve it. Patrice. We were thinking about creating your own adventure sort of approach to the course, like, and so that they can kind of make it their own, or try to navigate it kind of like, again, create your own adventure approach to problem solving in the course. Talking about what skills do you bring to the class, have them talk about what skills they bring to the class that will help them meet the challenges of the course. Again, sort of personalize, bring out their strengths in the discussion. Have them discuss experiences in the past with writing assignments that were challenging, or other academic assignments that were challenging, and then break down how they overcame that challenge. Largest challenge is time management, Hope writes. How we're going to manage time, conversation. Contract through constructing your schedule of everything that you do during the week. Can you get your work done for this course? If so, share your schedule and agree to make a contract. Everyone write one tip of time management goals. Share weakest point in small teams of 3 to figure out how to overcome that. Tell the story of a time you overcame an obstacle. So really getting students to reflect on what how they overcome obstacles in their life. Robin in Buffalo writes, create a fictitious assignment in the syllabus that students need to identify. Exercise, have students write a paper that does not meet the criteria or a worst practice solution to an assignment. Pick out the trait that is your weakness and say how you might overcome that weakness. Have students identify milestones to review where they sit. A bunch of assignments to pick and choose. Mastery learning, have you get a B maximum unless you go above and beyond the assignment. So yeah, have that kind of identify what an A looks like and what they might do to achieve that. That's pick a challenge of the syllabus and come up with a multiple step plan and make the challenge easier to digest in Suffolk. Patrice, explaining the time commitment for each project. And then last, challenge the students to improve the syllabus. And then Suffolk wrote, this challenge was challenging.
Fabulous, fabulous. Great ideas. What incredible work you did in just a few minutes. So as you can see, I hope you can see that this is a fairly simple process and it's really fun to do. It just takes a little bit of thought and preparation. And when I started doing faculty workshops like this on integrating creativity skills, and this was about 7 years ago, the educators would say to me, you need to collect these ideas for a book. And so that's what I did. You'll see here a book, Weaving Creativity into Every Strand of Your Curriculum. It has 750 ideas that have come from over 100 educators and creativity experts. These ideas might spark creative thinking in your classroom, hopefully. They're aimed at educators across the board, so from pre-K to graduate school. But hopefully they'll spark some interesting ideas for you. I will be sending you a PDF copy of the book for free via email, so you'll have a copy of the book. I sort of consider the PDF open source, so if you want to share it with someone that you think might like it, please share it, share it, share it. I have no problem with people sharing the book. I really just want the ideas out there because they came from educators and creativity experts. And again, my mission in life is to help create more engaging learning experiences that focus on creativity. So I'm also very happy to connect with any of you after to help you get started. If you want me to look over something that you've developed, I'd love to do that. Next year, I get to go, I'm going on a 1-year sabbatical, and you can see I'm very happy about that. So I'll be going on a 1-year sabbatical, and one of the things I'll be doing as part of that sabbatical is gathering stories from educators. I'm going to have one specifically focused on higher education stories. So if any of you would like me to feature you, or would let me feature you, I should say, I would love to do that. If you'd like to try something out, I'd love to hear how it goes. I'm working with 3 different universities right now, and most of them are, 2 of them are business schools, on bringing creativity into all of their curriculum, which is really exciting. And so I have lots of examples if you need more examples. And I will also be looking at on my sabbatical research around the creative environment of a classroom and how to set up a psychological environment for creativity to occur. So I'll be sending out to all of you as well a questionnaire that belongs to that. I hope that you'll take a few minutes of your time to complete the questionnaire. It would be really helpful to me. And having said all that, what questions do you have? And Chris, if you could read out the questions.
I don't see any in the chat right now.
Okay. Great. I was very clear and concise today.
Can you share some specific ideas about how to apply these ideas? Sorry.
When training faculty.
In training faculty? For those, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how do you use it to train faculty? Is that what you asked?
Yes, that's correct.
So if I was training faculty, I mean, it's really the same thing. What skill do you want your faculty to practice? You could have them practicing curiosity. You could have them, I mean, if you look at all of the skills, you could really integrate the skills into anything that you're teaching in any capacity, or even disseminating information. So if you wanted to disseminate information and you said, okay, I want to highlight the essence, you could say, I want you to tweet out exactly what you learned today in the training. You get 140 characters or less to tweet, highlight the essence of what you learned today. And the book, the Weaving book that I'll be sending you, has lots of ideas on things that you can integrate into your trainings. The newsletter, if you subscribe to the newsletter, in fact, I'd like to use your ideas that you came up with today on the course contract and syllabus, because I tried that out for the first time today, and I'm glad it worked well. And I think when I was thinking about a common ground for all the people that would be attending today, my thought was, well, at least everyone knows what a contract and syllabus is, and we could all talk about that. And it's something that is typically mundane and boring. So if it's okay with everyone, I'm going to share those ideas in my next newsletter. So again, with the training, it's just like with teaching. I mean, if you look at your content goal of what you want them to achieve, and you look at those creativity skill sets, some of the skills will come naturally. Like some things you might already be doing. And that's one of the exciting things I found with the Weaving book, is when teachers go through it, or even trainers go through it, and they go, oh, well, I'm already doing this. Well, guess what? You're already doing creativity. And for people who feel as if they're not creative educators, they often feel more creative because they realize a lot of what they're doing already is showcasing creative thinking skills.
Yeah, that kind of segues nicely into the question after that. So Hope asked, what do we do when we're working with faculty and they say to us things like, how do we find time to develop things like this, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of faculty are resistant to doing things like this because they feel like it's going to take a lot of time. So what would you say to someone who says that?
So I would say to them, I mean, we spent about 20 minutes, and we probably came up as a group, we probably came up with 30 ideas total. If you really look at, and I have, when I do coaching, I do a lot of coaching with professors, and I say, all right, take the list, laminate it, and put it up someplace close. So if you're looking at your content, and once you start practicing, it comes much more naturally than to really have to deliberately think about it. But you look at your content, and for example, if I'm teaching something on, let me think of something here. I'm working with a professor right now on Excel, and she's like, Excel is just so boring, and teaching these business students on Excel is just so dull. And I had her look at the skills, and she's like, I really wish and I said, what's the biggest challenge with teaching Excel? And she said, it's just so challenging. Well, embracing the challenge was so easy to pick out as a skill for her to integrate. And she said, all right, I'm going to, at the start of each lesson, I'm going to have them embrace the challenge, and I'm going to give them a challenge to do with Excel and see if they can figure it out based on the homework they had. And it was really quick to do. So I didn't answer your question. I sort of went around it. But my response to that is it takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And it might take some additional preparation if you're doing something like, you're bringing balls into class. Well, then you need to stop and get balls. Okay. But something like having your students ask questions, or, bringing in Post-its, it's really not going to take a whole lot of preparation. And you start small. You start with a lesson, and you continue to build. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start with the contract and syllabus today is because it's your first day. So what could you do on the second day? And what could you try on the third day? And
it also helps to talk with colleagues too.
Absolutely.
And there's a question about what your workshops might look like if you're going to do them. But if we have time to get that. Otherwise, you guys can maybe connect offline. But I know Anne had a question she wanted to ask for Boyd.
Speak up. If you could only choose one, which do you think would be the most important one to choose from?
And out of all the skills, it depends on the age, it depends on the group. Sometimes when I have a group that I'm working with, and this is not creativity related, if I'm teaching them something else, even just like research methods kind of stuff, and they're having a hard time thinking about original ideas, then I would give them an assignment to deliberately practice that. Because, the interesting thing about creative thinking skills is they're transdisciplinary. So if you're working on originality and helping students be more original in, let's just say, biology, then they're going to be able to apply that to, say, foreign languages or mathematics. So you want to think about the demographic you're working with and this particular group you're working with. And if you're struggling and you're saying, this group, they're just, they go on and on and on about things. They can't just highlight the essence. Well, then guess what? You're going to highlight the essence into your set. Now, if you don't know your group, what do I think is the most important thing? I mean, if you're really focusing on creativity, be original. I mean, that's about generating novel ideas and producing consider many alternatives, which is really around fluency and being able to generate lots of ideas. Because I find of all skills related to the creative problem solving and creative thinking world, being able to come up with lots of ideas breeds new ideas. So quantity breeds quality. And that's a skill that's not often taught, as you're going through school, because we're really focused on, unfortunately, the standardized testing and finding the one right answer. And when we think about those future job skills, that you might need to be able to think about more than one right answer. You have to look at different possibilities. Another piece that we didn't talk about today, but I think is really important, is tolerating ambiguity or uncertainty. When you're dealing with complex problems, you will have to deal with uncertainty. And it's a really uncomfortable place for people. So there's two things that I do in my own classes. One is I leave a section in my contract and syllabus that says tolerate the ambiguity. And that means you're not going to know what's going to happen. Okay. You're not going to know what your assignment is. You're not going to know what we're going to do in class. You're just going to have to show up and go with it. And for a lot of students, it's like, oh my gosh, it's really uncomfortable. But as they go through it, it's also a little bit exciting. And another thing I do in my distance courses is I have a weekly TOA assignment. And I do this in my current issues course because sometimes things come up in the field of creativity research that I don't have planned in my contract and syllabus. So every week they have what I call a TOA assignment. And the TOA assignment can be anything I want, but it's going to take the students about 30 minutes to complete, and they're not going to know what it is until they open up the folder for the week. And it creates this element of surprise, which I love. I love to bring elements of surprise into my class. And I also think it brings this notion of, sometimes you don't have all the information and you just have to go with it. And it's not going to feel comfortable and you want to know the answer, but you have to resist that. And you have to just go with it and see what happens. So I think tolerating ambiguity is something that we don't often teach. And it's so important for complex problem solving. I'll also tell you something playful and fun that I do. I use Fiverr a lot for my classes. So Fiverr is a website. If you haven't gone to it, it's just fun to go to because you get, you can do all these things for $5. So when I'm feeling like my students need a little element of surprise, for an example, you can have someone do the voice of Morgan Freeman for $5, and they'll say whatever you want for $5 in the voice of Morgan Freeman. So as my students, entered the discussion board for their online course, it said, "Hello, this week in class, we'd like you to do," and it was in the voice of Morgan Freeman. And they were just, their mind was blown over something so simple that I did to plan that would create this element of surprise and playfulness. And they said, "Oh my gosh, you had Morgan Freeman. Tell us what our assignment was going to be for this week." It wasn't really Morgan Freeman. It was just someone doing it for $5.
Cindy, I know we're past time. Do you have a couple more minutes? We have a couple more questions.
Sure, if everyone wants to stick around.
Yeah, folks want to disconnect, they could disconnect. But
Okay.
it was asked, could you see applying these skills in a chronological way through the semester, and how might they be interrelated and prioritized? So you've talked about this a little bit in answering the last question, but
yeah. So in terms of, they're certainly interrelated. So we did talk about look at it another way, but look at another way is about looking at things from multiple perspectives. And when you do that, you're also producing and considering many alternatives. And you'll see a lot of overlap between the skills. I would say, there's different ways to approach it. One is you could say, by the end of this course, I really want my students to be asking a lot of questions. I want them to get curious. I want them to feel comfortable asking questions as they go through my content of, let's just say, biology, okay? And I think biology and curiosity are two really important things and you can frame each class so that it has an element of curiosity to it. And it becomes sort of natural to the students to be able to do that. So this professor I told you about that was looking at embracing challenges in Excel. Every class she has, the students come in and they have to embrace the challenge, and she uses that language with them. I want you to embrace the challenge and take this on. And then she talks a little bit about their experience in embracing the challenge. And sometimes it's really complex and sometimes it's hard. And what do you do to get through it? Other people just use, they'll just pick something because they feel like one of their lessons is dull and their students are disengaged. So when I started working with John Cabra, and he would come to me and he teaches the hardest course in our curriculum, which is assessments. And he said, Cindy, I need to do something. Will you help me with this? And so I said, yeah, all right, let's take the worst thing that you teach, like something that you teach that you don't like what you're doing at all. And the students are disengaged and they're not really retaining it. And that's when he went into his factor analysis. It's just terrible. And so we reworked it using Make It Swing, Make It Ring. And it fit for that lesson. It was one lesson. Do I think that they were engaged? Is that a skill that I think they'll use in the future from one lesson? Probably not, but it got them moving around and it got them more engaged. So it depends on what your objectives are. And I think it depends on the content that you're teaching. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Someone asked what the acronym TOA was.
Tolerate the ambiguity. I also want to mention, Chris, that the weaving is part of actually a much bigger model that Torrance built. And Torrance built the model, the Torrance incubation model for creative teaching and learning. And I've recently published a paper with Dr. Keller Mathers on using the whole model in a higher education class and how I reformatted the whole class. I don't know if I can share that paper with you legally, but I have it. If any of you, I think I could print out a copy. I will have to check with my librarian friends to see the ethics code around that. But I recently published an article on using this whole model of creative teaching and learning in an entire graduate course that we redesigned.
Or if you've just shared a citation, we could probably find it on all libraries.
Okay.
Right? Or
Great.
Component or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the only other question we didn't address, which maybe we could end with here, is if one of us want to bring you to one of our campuses for a half-day workshop or a full-day workshop or something like that, could you just, obviously you'd probably tailor it to the needs of the campus, but roughly what might that look like?
So I think, a half-day workshop, we go into the skills and we practice the skills more. I think, when I talk about the full model that we use, the Torrance incubation model, it's much more complex, but it adds a richness and depth that is really exciting. I can't describe it in any other way. But when we first started teaching the Torrance incubation model, it was a little bit too much for people to get in an hour or two. And when we narrowed it down, and this was the work that I did with Sue Keller Mathers, when we narrowed it down to the nuts and bolts is what do I really want people to walk away with? It's the skills, because the skills are easy. You can do it quickly. It doesn't take a lot of time to redesign. So I would expand on the creative thinking skills for a half-day workshop so that we really get into what does a skill mean? What does it look like? How can you use it? And getting people to actually design their lessons. So in a half-day workshop that I've run with schools, I really try to spend that, if I have a half a day, looking at the skills and then having them apply them. And then I give them coaching feedback and we rework them and people give each other different ideas. In a full day workshop, what I usually do is I do half day of the skills and then half day on the Torrance incubation model. And the Torrance incubation model has 3 layers to it, which is heightening anticipation and arousing curiosity, and then deepening expectations and extending the learning. And that's to highlight the essence of what it looks like. And again, if any of you are interested, I'm happy to give you some literature on looking more deeply into that. But that really takes a whole redesign of a lesson. And it takes a little bit more thought, but it can be, when we redesigned this course, the students that came to us, some of them had PhDs and they said, this was the best learning experience I've ever had in my life. And I've never had such depth and richness and engagement in a class. And so that's what we do when we do a full day workshop.
Great. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I'm going to try something right now and see if it works. I'm going to unmute everybody and let everyone applaud.
Thank you.
Now, now I muted everybody again. So anyway, thanks so much, Cindy. This was really good. And what we'll do now is we're probably take a 5-minute break here. If everybody wants to, if you want to disconnect, go ahead. I'm going to stop the recording in a minute, and I'll share that. I'll share the chat as well, and then Cindy is again graciously enough to provide a PDF copy of her book. I'll share that as well. Those of you that are coordinating on your sites, if you could just maybe make sure I have all the names. Some of you didn't register and are at a site, so I want to make sure everybody gets all this material. So make sure that you let me know who showed up, and I'll connect with you individually to do that. All right. So again, I'm going to stop the recording now.